A few years ago, I wrote a design book called Function, Restraint, and Subversion in Typography for Princeton Architectural Press. And the working title of it, for most of the time I was working on it, from the proposal down into writing it, it was just called Function, Restraint, and Subversion. Which I loved. I thought it was cool. I thought it sounded kind of weird. It was like a little bit, I don't know, post-punk. It was evocative. And maybe it wasn't super clear what the book was about, but I kind of felt like the subtitle of the book could take care of that. And at one point, the publisher got back to me, and the sales department or the marketing department or whoever wanted to change the name. They said like it wasn't clear what it was about, and that they just wanted to add in typography to it. At the time, my instinct was, these people are publishers. They publish dozens of books a year. They've done it for like 20 years. They know what they're doing. I'm just a random dude working on his first book. So I'm going to trust them. And there's obviously a point here. The point is that I never referred to that book by its title ever again. Something about it rubbed me the wrong way, and I hated it. And if I have a regret, it's that I didn't either push back on them for that decision that they wanted to make, or that I didn't just say, okay, the title doesn't work, let's come up with a list of 10 new titles, instead of just saying, all right, you guys know what you're doing. I kind of, and what's interesting is that book has about 5 little anecdotes to it where I feel the same way. At one point, I actually wanted to stop writing it altogether because I realized there's a massive difference between a proposal for a book and an actual book. And I got about halfway and realized this isn't necessarily the way I want to do this book. But I was sort of locked into it. Maybe I felt some pressure. And again, maybe I felt like these people do this for a living. They know what's up. But in the grand scheme of things, like, I'm not super inclined to believe that anybody in publishing knows what they're doing. And the real issue is that the multiple kind of mistakes I made with that project had everything to do with having a deep-seated instinct that this wasn't right. Like, this wasn't the way to do this. This wasn't the way to edit it, or whatever it was. Like, the way that they were doing things, like, to me, they didn't feel right. And it's not a criticism of the way that they were doing things. It was that the way I wanted to do things probably should have been different. And maybe had the title stayed the same, maybe it still would have kind of tanked, because I think it did. But I also think it tanked in part because it had a terrible name. It was super long, and it sounds cool for a second, like, ooh, function, restraint, and subversion. What's that mean? In typography, who gives a shit? And when I look back on it, it's a cool book, and I'm happy with it. And I don't know that I would change anything besides the title, and I would change the cover. But I find that just sort of throughout my career, most of the mistakes I made where I really wish I could go back and do something different, they're less mistakes I made and more when I kind of gave up my own, I don't know what you call it, my own, whatever you call it when you're in charge of something. Abdicated my responsibility because I thought somebody else knew better. I thought they knew what they were doing or whatever. And maybe they did know what they were doing, but in that instance, I had doubts about it, and then instead I still went along with it. And that feeling, I would say 9 times out of 10, that gut instinct of this ain't right, this isn't the way to do it, that instinct is correct. Every once in a while I get that instinct, and maybe I get like a little bit of anxiety about something, and it turns out it was unfounded and I was wrong. But most of the time, You know, that instinct is like a little alarm system of your nervous system or your brain or whatever, looking at a scenario, using pattern recognition and seeing that that scenario's happened before and saying like, this isn't the right way to do this. And pushing that down and ignoring it is usually a decision that I regret. So, and I think it undermines your confidence overall when you repeatedly have an instinct and then you push it down. I feel like that the 1 out of 10 times that instinct is right or wrong, I'd rather make those mistakes anyway. I'd rather not make the 9 out of 10 and trade it for the 1 out of 10. All right, thanks a lot for watching. Have a good one.